Until one day, I found out that I bore a striking resemblance to that Carol, about 70 to 80% similar. One day, I broke down and yelled, "If you care so much about that Carol, go find her. Why did you imprison me?" That was the first time Glen revealed his demonic nature. Ding! Wisnovel reminds you to click the subscribe button in the bottom right corner to read the complete novel. He threw me heavily to the floor, whipped me with a belt, and shackled me with ankle restraints. She's dead. She died 2 years ago. You are Carol. You are here to pay off her debts for her. That night, he almost beat me to a pulp, but the next morning, he held the broken me in his arms like a helpless child. What have I done? I'm sorry, Maggie. I'm sorry. I can't control myself. Trembling, he bowed to apologize to me. He even gave me a knife and asked me to stab him, begging me not to leave him. I think I've met the paranoid male lead from a novel. He might even have a split personality. Since then, Glen would go crazy in the middle of the night and beat me repeatedly. And in the sober morning of the next day, he would curse himself for not being human. No matter how many times I tried to escape, he would always catch me and bring me back. Every time I tried to escape, he would go crazy. At first, I resisted by going on a hunger strike. He would hold my face and offer hot porridge to me. If I refused to drink it, he would slap me, then push my head into the bowl. "I told you to drink." I spent 2 hours cooking this porridge. Then, with my face covered in broken bowl shards, he would lift me up and lick the porridge off my face. I couldn't help it and ended up vomiting. Looking into his sinister eyes, I cried and said, "Don't hit me. I'll wash the sheets. I will." Suddenly, Glen laughed, threw his head back, smashed all the bowls, and knelt on the shards. "Maggie, you hit me. Don't be angry. I just want you to love me. Please love me, okay?" I cried and said I loved him, but he suddenly grabbed my neck and forcefully slammed me against the wall. "No, Carol, you don't love me. Otherwise, why did you jump off the building? Why did you jump off with our child? Give me back the child. Give it back to me." I tried to commit suicide, but the price was something I couldn't bear. He cooked my beloved dog into a pot of meat. "You commit suicide once, and I'll kill someone close to you once. Classmates, friends, relatives. I've killed people before anyway. Glen Storm, he has killed before. I know that when he's sick, his words can't be fully trusted, but when he killed the dog, his actions were so skillful, and there was even a desire for blood in his eyes." At this moment, Glen's large hand covered my lower abdomen and slowly moved downwards. I held his hand and said through gritted teeth, "Glen, this is my home." Glen chuckled and said something that made me feel cold all over. "Maggie Saxon, is this drama not over yet?" Almost instantly, I reached out and grabbed the knife on the cutting board. When a person is desperate to escape from pain, all it takes is a moment to lose control. But at that moment, I heard my mom's footsteps at the door. Glen and I quickly separated. He looked down at me. "What are you doing with the knife?" I trembled and grabbed a piece of fruit. "I'm going to cut some fruit to replenish my nutrition." My mom came back, and her eyes scanned between me and Glen. Not long after, she dragged me into the room and slapped me. "I kept you at home, not for you to hook up with him. You've already given Glen to your sister, so you should behave." I already had low blood sugar, and after the slap, I could barely stand, but my mom didn't care at all. "Stop acting, you girl. You've been acting since you were young, and I know it." After that, my mom slammed the door and left. Why is my mom so harsh on me? Because my dad died because of me. That time when I was walking the dog suddenly ran towards the road, and I almost got hit by a car while trying to chase after it. It was my dad who rushed over and pushed me out of the way. I was fine, but I lost my father. Since then, my mom has been distant from me. She cried and hit me, asking me why I had to come back. If I hadn't come back, my father wouldn't have died. I did all the hard and tiring work, while Lori was her only darling daughter, because she couldn't bear to lose another daughter. Every time she saw me, she would think of the father who died because of me. She said, if it weren't for me, Lori wouldn't have lost her father at a young age. I deprived my sister of the right to enjoy happiness. Later, in order to make amends, I gave up the opportunity to study abroad for my sister and left the best clothes and food for her. But my mom still couldn't accept me. I had a boyfriend before, and we dated for 3 years. After Lori took a liking to him, I let her have him. But just a month later, she got bored and broke up with him. A person's patience also has its limits. My mom only remembered that my father was hit because of me, but she forgot that it was Lori who intentionally let go of the dog's leash. Just because I suddenly came back and took away everything that belonged to her, she wanted me to taste the feeling of losing a beloved pet. If it weren't for her, Dad wouldn't have died. Countless painful memories came flooding back. I stumbled out of the house. It was raining outside, but I didn't want to stop. I just kept running. I didn't bring my phone. I didn't even bring the key to the apartment. So, I was out all day. It wasn't until evening that Glen found me on a bench in the park. He draped his coat over me, soaked in rain, like a worried boyfriend. "Why didn't you bring your phone? Do you know how worried everyone was?" In that moment, it felt like I was back at work, with him worrying about me, not wanting me to run around. I was momentarily stunned. It wasn't until Glen's fingers lifted my chin, his tone cool. "Don't make me unable to find you again, Carol. I'm not Carol." I tore off his clothes and shouted like a madwoman. woman. Glen hugged me tightly, suffocating me like countless nights before. I punched and kicked, but he held me tightly, until Lori appeared. "What are you doing?" Glen held me down and explained to Lori. "Your sister is a bit agitated now. It seems very likely that she has bipolar disorder. I suggest taking her to a psychologist for treatment." "I'm not sick. This lunatic Glen Storm, he's the real madman." Lori's eyes flickered, then suddenly said, "I'll take care of it." Glen gave Lori the address and phone number of a private clinic, but he didn't understand Lori well enough. That night, Lori bought me a plane ticket. "I've put Glen to sleep. You leave now. It's best not to come back before I get married." I used to hate Lori so much, but now I'm so grateful to her. I took the ticket and couldn't help but give her a hug. "I wish you happiness. You and him must be happy, really. Save your breath." After enduring for 2 years, I finally waited for this moment. I'm free. That night, I threw away my phone card, threw away everything, and flew abroad. For 2 months in a row, no one contacted me, and no one found me. I secretly called my best friend in country. She said Lori and Glen were very happy, always showing affection. That put my mind at ease. Perhaps Lori really had more charm and means to turn a lunatic into normal? It had nothing to do with me anymore. The long-lost ease made me indulge. Until, in the 4th month of settling abroad, after work, a figure suddenly appeared in my sight, making me stiff on the spot. Even in a foreign country, even after months apart, I could still recognize him at a glance. Glen lowered his head to look at his phone, then suddenly walked towards a bakery I often went to. My intuition told me that he was looking for me. Perhaps sensing my gaze, he turned his head just before entering the shop, almost meeting my eyes. I lowered my head and blended into the crowd, but at that moment, someone tapped my shoulder. Before I could let out a cry, the person next to me pulled me into a small alley. It was Lori. After not seeing her for a few months, she had become thinner, but her stomach had bulged. She was pregnant? Why hadn't I heard about her getting married? No, Glen wouldn't suddenly come here. The only person in the world who knew where I was is Lori. For a moment, I felt extremely embarrassed. "Did you bring Glen to find me?" Lori swallowed, and suddenly her eyes turned red. "I brought him here. I don't want to be you anymore. I want to reclaim my identity." With red eyes, Lori said that Glen was a demon, a devil, and she asked who Carol was. So Glen would have a fit with anyone. This lunatic. But why should I change back identity with her? I shook off her hand. "It was you who swapped identities with me in the first place. Please, please switch back with me." I had never seen Lori like this before. "Lori, you are pregnant now. How can I switch with you? I can get rid of the baby." I couldn't help but laugh. "Lori Saxon, you didn't say this before. It was you who made me leave. And you don't understand Glen, do you? Do you think everything will be fine if we switch back? He won't let us off the hook. Not a single one of us." Glen came out of the bakery across the street. I saw him at a glance and broke free from Lori and left. I couldn't stay in this city any longer. Lori would betray me at any time. I immediately packed up and prepared to leave, but I didn't expect that as soon as I left my place, I saw Glen with a few bodyguards surrounding the area. Those evil eyes fell on me again. No way to escape. I made a bold move, pushed away a person, and ran out. The only thought in my mind was that I must not be caught by Glen again. But I was too hasty in my escape, so much so that I didn't see the speeding car coming. With a bang, I was hit and thrown out, engulfed by the crowd. Wait till I opened my eyes again. A man turned around against the light. He was tall and had gentle features. It wasn't Glen, and I instinctively breathed a sigh of relief. "Hail Lush." The man handed me a cup of hot water and introduced himself. Upon hearing this name, I shook all over and forced myself to sit up. "Are you a friend of Carol's?" I had collected some scattered information about Carol when I was with Glen. She was an orphan, and her only friend was someone named Hail Lush. I tried many ways to contact him, but I never found him. I could only send him a message through email. Hail Lush nodded. "How did you rescue me from Glen?" Hail Lush said that he had seen all the emails I sent him, but Carol's death was a blow to him. They grew up in an orphanage, and he treated Carol like a sister. He never expected her to commit suicide, until I told him that Carol was most likely not a suicide. He couldn't believe it and had been secretly observing me, until Glen appeared and saw that lunatic chasing me. When I got lost in the crowd, he took me away in the confusion. "Sorry for not helping you right away." "It's okay. You've already helped me a lot, as long as I didn't fall into Glen's hands." "Why do you say that Carol was murdered? Do you have evidence?" "Of course, I do. I once found Carol's diary at home. I saw the torment on every page. In the last 2 pages, she wrote that she was pregnant and planned to escape, but her things were found by Glen. Glen didn't know about that diary, but I was under too much surveillance at the time and couldn't bring it out. So, I've been looking for Hail Lush because I need help. Glen won't let me me off. It's either his death or mine. Since that's the case, I might as well take a gamble. I want to go back and get that diary. When I got home again, my mom looked haggard. When she saw me, she suddenly stood up and hit me, crying, "You finally came back. Do you know how miserable you've made your sister?" My mom cried bitterly. I pushed her away. Did I cause her harm? Who wanted to exchange identities with me in the first place? Don't you know that in your hearts? My mom ignored me and kept hitting me. It's all because of you. You turned your sister into that state. You have to change her back for me. Do you think Glen didn't know about the identity swap between us at the beginning? Why didn't he expose it? Because he wanted both of us. Lori is your daughter, and I'm not. But my mom acted like she was crazy, grabbed me, and tried to leave. Lori is pregnant, and Glen imprisoned her. Can you go and cover for her for a while? Just a few days, okay? I laughed. Glen is a murderer. If I go back, he'll kill me. My mom froze. Murderer? You actually handed Lori over to a murderer. Now is not the time to say these things.